Here we go. Hello, welcome to Lightroom Blab, we'll call it today. I'm here. What's that?
They gotta call it something.
Yeah. Mark is here, of course. I'm here. We've got Peter and Jeff and Emmanuel and John and Christopher and Steve are all here, which is fantastic. We love having you guys here with us, of course. And tonight, I know we were going to do another full-on critique show, and we'll come back to that either next week or sometime very soon. Hello, Maya. Awesome. I'm so glad that you're joining us again, Maya. Hello.
Hello.
And Judy's here too. Awesome. So we were going to do a full-on critique show, and we'll get back to that again in a week or two or whenever. But Lightroom, Adobe today just announced 2 new versions of Lightroom. So I shot Mark a message and asked him what he thought about talking about that and demonstrating the new version and talking about the differences between the two so you guys could understand them a little bit better. And so that's what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, and I was hoping to have it installed so I could play with it too, but my Creative Cloud installer is buggered and I can't get it to update.
Yeah. I actually had a problem installing it today. I had to get on the line being a chat with Adobe's tech support in order to get it to show up as an available app for me to install on my Creative Cloud software. So I managed to get it.
I've been doing that. The Creative Cloud desktop app actually needed to be updated before it would do that, and it's the update for that that's not cooperating.
Okay. Yeah, that's a bummer. So Steve says, who else's Lightroom is now slower when making adjustments? That's crazy stuff. I actually I did update my regular Lightroom installation, but I haven't actually spent any time in it at all because I was working on the video that just went live on my channel 30 minutes ago and prepping for this live show that Mike and I are doing. Mark, did I say Mike?
I think you did.
Mark. God, where did Mike come from?
Whoever it is.
Yeah.
That guy.
Right. So right away, I want to let you know, if you guys have any kind of Lightroom questions, whether it's about the new version or the old version, or anything else, or editing in general, just let us know in the chat, and of course, we'll answer them for you. I want to say hi to Sandy, who has joined us now, and Vincent is here. Vincent, this is actually our new start time. We decided to start a half an hour earlier and run a half an hour later so we could do a 2-hour show instead of a 1-hour show. Carlos Smooth is here. Awesome. And Scott says, I don't have Lightroom yet, but I'm getting ready to purchase it. So, Scott, I actually have a question for you, because what you mean by purchase is something that we should talk about. And that is, are you planning, Scott, to purchase the standalone version of Lightroom 6, where you pay whatever it is, $100 or $150, and then you download the software and you own it? Or are you, when you say purchase, are you talking about subscribing to Adobe's photography program? Let us know in the comments, because this is something, there's an important point, an important thing you should know about before you make that purchasing choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so Steve, go ahead.
Things.
Yeah. Steve says, once in develop module and a few steps in, it slows down really bad when zooming in. Sandy says, my Lightroom has never been slow. The new version is also fine. Hello to Sanjay, who says that we are both good teachers. Thank you very much for that, Sanjay. We appreciate that. Let's see. John says, to get the option to show up, I just did check for app updates. And then it was available. I tried that several times, and it would refresh, but the app update wouldn't show. What I ended up having to do was sign out of Adobe's Creative Cloud software, which I had already tried earlier. But when I was on with chat support, they asked me to try it again, and I did. And when I signed back in, then it was finally available. So Scott says, I was going to purchase the software and then upgrade. So if you mean purchase Lightroom 6 for like $120 or $150 or something like that, I actually would recommend that you do not do that. And the reason for that is that software,
that style,
that's dead. Adobe announced today with these updates that the standalone version is dead software. It's going to get one more major camera support update to bring in the Nikon D850 support. And then at the end of this year, at the end of 2017, there will be no more updates to that program. No bug fixes, no new features, and no new camera support added to the standalone version of Lightroom. And there's never going to be a Lightroom 7 that you can buy separately. iLove says, the forced Adobe subscription is really pissing me off. I understand that. I know that there are a lot of people who don't care for the subscription model, and I respect that. I don't mind paying for it because I like that I always have the most up-to-date version, even though I actually don't always use the most up-to-date version because I wait for them to fix the bugs on a new release. But I like that I'm getting the continuous support and the updates, and I'm happy to pay the $10 a month for it. So, Fulminato, I'm probably saying that wrong, but hello Fulminato, says end of support doesn't mean the old installed will stop to work. That is correct. It will still work, and they're actually going to continue selling Lightroom 6 for an undetermined amount of time. That's a direct quote. But the thing is, you should be aware that if you're planning to spend that money, you are buying software that is literally about to go off of life support, which means that once it breaks, which at some point it will, you know, you will never get an update for it, and your only choice if you want to continue to use some form of Lightroom will be an Adobe subscription.
Yeah. And or if you do a camera upgrade further down the road, then eventually won't work.
Right, right. Now, one thing you will be able to do for a while, even after they stop updating, but still start, you know, still have cameras coming out, is use the Adobe DNG converter. But even after a while, after a certain point, even the DNG converter and the DNGs that are produced by it won't be supported by that version of Lightroom. So that's something to be aware of there. All right, so iLove has a question. Will Adobe CC Lightroom 6 add the D850 before its demise? Yes.
That's what they're saying anyway.
Yeah. Will Adobe 6 straight purchase add the 850? Yes, that will. The D850 support is coming for Lightroom 6 standalone software, but that's probably going to be the last major update for camera support and anything else. You might get a few bug fixes before the end of the year, but that's going to be it. So yes, it will support the D850.
And I also believe too that the upgrades that we just received, well, I didn't receive because mine's buggered up, the ones that people received through the CC for the current version of Lightroom isn't available for the purchase one. I think it's like any of the additional stuff
right
available for the purchase, the standalone version. So.
Right. I think, yeah, you are correct about that, I believe. And those updates were speed focused, meant to make it launch faster, run faster, develop faster, all of those things. I believe you're right. I believe those updates did not come to the standalone version, only to the Lightroom CC version. Will says he loves the new updates. Vincent says Affinity is working on a file system software akin to Lightroom. And Scott says, thanks for the advice. What should I buy in the meantime? Do you have any recommendations, Mark?
But that's difficult to say. If he doesn't mind the subscription package, then I'm not sure where he's located. But like $10 a month or whatever it is, you get the Photoshop and Lightroom. But otherwise, I'm not 100% sure what else is really available other than maybe that Affinity photo. But I've never used it, so I couldn't say one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Affinity, I know they've been talking about working on something, but that's not available yet. And there's no word as to when it will be available. They're a competitive suite of software so far. They have an Illustrator competitor and a Photoshop competitor, and they're working on a Lightroom competitor. So I look forward to seeing that when it comes out. But as of right now, if I was going to make a recommendation, if you do not want to subscribe to Adobe's plan, then I would say your best bet is probably to look at the Capture One software. It's pricier. It's like $300 for the standalone version, I believe. In fact, I'm gonna look it up real quick just to see. But I would say that that's probably the #1 competitor to Lightroom now. You used to have Apple's Aperture, but they sunsetted that software years ago now. There are a few free raw processing software options out there that you can look at if you want to, but I've never found them to be great. Like, they're not bad, but they're, in my opinion, I didn't care for using them in my workflow just because there was too much friction in it for me. So
another option would be too, I just remembered, if you're running Windows 10, I think it's only available for Windows 10. It's called Photoscape X.
Okay.
And like there's an older version of Photoscape which is pretty rudimentary, but it actually works half decently.
Mm-hmm.
But for Windows 10, there's one called Photoscape X, and has sort of a semi-familiar Lightroom feel to it with sliders and that for making adjustments, and it actually is free, but you can also purchase it and you basically get additional features if you purchase it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've never heard of that software, so I can't make any comment on it. And Scott says thanks for that info, but he's on a Mac.
Okay.
I did just take a look. I put the link for Capture One in the chat, and Capture One is $300 US. That's a 3-seat license, meaning you can run it on 3 different computers at the same time. Vincent says Affinity has a raw processor, but it doesn't have the interface to view the files. And that is accurate. So Affinity basically works right now like Photoshop works with the Camera Raw plugin, meaning if you open a raw file in Affinity, it'll open up into their raw processing tool. I've played with the raw processing tool a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I didn't like it very much. I think they were trying to separate themselves from Lightroom and Adobe, and so they changed their sliders a little bit, and I didn't care for that. But that's me and my feeling, my perspective on it.
Yeah, I actually just looked at Photoscape X, and it actually does have a Mac version as well. So I'm just going to put a link in the chat.
Oh, okay, excellent. So that is an option then you could look at, Scott. So Jason said, my experience with Affinity earlier in the month was not good. And then Carlos says, the thing is how far big companies go to get to know about us more than we do and how they wash our brain. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Carlos. I really do. That's something I always struggle with, too, with all of these different things. And it's hard because it's like, you want to use tools or software or things that are advantageous, and there's always a trade-off to those things. And sometimes those trade-offs are hard to swallow. I get that. Capture One for Sony people is free, with a Pro version upgrade being $50. That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Sanjay's asking, I can work on my raw files from the 5D Mark III on Lightroom, but my new 80D raw files cannot open on Lightroom. I have subscribed to Lightroom and Photoshop from Creative Cloud, and he's wondering if he updates it to be more charge, and there won't be any more charge.
Right. And if you update it, you should get the support for the 80D raw files, and you're already subscribed, so like Mark said, no additional charge for that. But I Love makes the point here that you have, for the photography program, which is Photoshop and Lightroom, you get 20 gigabytes of cloud storage as well, and that's $10 a month. And then you also have the new program that they just launched today, which is the new version of Lightroom. And we'll get into that in just a minute. You're looking at it on the screen, but we haven't talked about any of this interface stuff or what's going on here. The new version of Lightroom only, no other software, and 1 terabyte of storage for $9.99 a month. So you now have 2 different $10 a month subscription options that are based around photography from Adobe. One is that Lightroom only, the new version of Lightroom, and then the other one is the normal photography program that we have been talking about, and I have been using, and a number of you have been using. Mark, you use it for quite a while now. So Jason just asked if they made any changes to the full Creative Cloud subscription. I don't know about the full subscription, what changes are made to that. I just very briefly looked at the website today, and I saw it was $49 for all the apps. So I think that's the same. I don't think that anything has changed with the full subscription. All right, John says, I wonder if they will be able to connect or use other cloud storage in the future, like tapping into Backblaze or Amazon Drive or something like that. That would be really nice. I would like that quite a bit, but I'm willing to bet not, because one of the things they're going to want you to do is pay for your storage, and the additional payments for storage is additional revenue. So that would be my guess, but I don't know. All right, should we look at these different pieces of software now and talk about the differences and answer some questions on them?
Might as well, because I haven't been able to look at it myself. So.
All right, so what we are currently looking at here is the new interface for the new version of Adobe Lightroom, which is called Adobe Lightroom CC. The old version of Adobe Lightroom has been rebranded as Adobe Lightroom CC Classic. The one change that they did make to the photography plan, the $9.99 a month for Photoshop and Lightroom, is you now get both versions of Lightroom. You get this new CC version and the Lightroom Classic version that we've all been used to using. So what we're looking at here is the interface for the new Adobe Lightroom CC. And when I opened this up, the very first thing I thought about this was this reminded me of Apple's new Photos app. It is very much focused on the photos, on being streamlined. Adobe is baking in some AI into this, like Apple has been, and Google with Google Photos, to try to auto-tag photos for you and simplify the organization, allowing you to just search, by keyword that you shouldn't even have to apply, or that they don't want you to have to apply. And this new Lightroom CC version is cloud focused. It is 100% cloud focused software. And why would you need 2, Vincent says. Here's my thought on this. My thought is they're giving you both on the photography plan for 2 reasons. Number one, because they know damn well that if they tried to just make this the new Lightroom and take away the old version, they would have a revolt on their hands. Because this new version is very stripped down. It still has a lot of power to it, don't get me wrong, but it is nowhere near what we're used to with Lightroom in terms of capability, customization, workflow, and things like that. And let me just give you an example. We're looking here at the library view of the software, and over here, this is your left sidebar, and you have 2 buttons. You have the Add Photos button, which we'll go through in a moment and look at their importing, and then you have My Photos. And when you click My Photos, it expands, and it shows you have the option to view all photos, recently added photos. You can look at them by date, which it does automatically for you. And then you have albums that you can create and manage yourself. And what you'll notice here is there is no file or folder structure that we can see. In the regular Lightroom, which I'm going to switch to right now, when you are in regular Lightroom, in your library module, you can see and manage your folders and files on your hard drive. This version of Lightroom is focused towards a folder and file management system, and the cloud version is moving away from that. So that's one of the reasons they had to, because like I said, if they just gave us this new version and said, okay, this is Lightroom now, deal with it, I guarantee you, a large majority of people would bolt and go to something like Capture One or Affinity or something else. So Jason says, yuck, the whole point of Lightroom for me has been organization. Jason, I 100% agree. And I personally don't like the idea of of the lock-in that this system creates. And let me explain what I'm talking about. All of these files and folders are stored inside of a catalog container. So I'm going to switch over to my Finder, my computer file explorer. And this file right here, this lrlib file, this is the new Lightroom library that goes along with the Lightroom CC software. And if you look, with the import that I have, it's 7.49 gigabytes. And the reason for that is all of the photos that you see here in my Lightroom CC, all 563 of them, they are all contained inside of this file. So I'm going to right click and do show package contents, and when I do, you can see we get 4 different folders. And this weird crypto E4225DB blah blah blah, this is where the actual catalog file is that we're used to with Lightroom, along with a folder here that says originals, and this is where the folders and the files are actually contained, where they are automatically organized by date when they are imported, with no ability for me to manipulate these folders or files inside of Lightroom. All I can do inside of Lightroom is move them into different albums. That's it. And like, you can't even right click on an image and say show in Finder like you can in regular Lightroom, because they don't want you working with the files and the folders. The idea is everything is contained in that library, and that's supposed to streamline the cloud synchronization process. All right, so before we go on, let's jump back in here. So I wonder, okay, we talked about that. Vincent says, usually Black Monday has an offer on Amazon that can be 10 to 20% less. Yeah, I totally understand. And that's sometimes a way to get the software for cheaper, but that's going to be going away. Jeff says the other option of Lightroom CC, Lightroom Classic CC, and Photoshop CC plus a terabyte is $19.99 a month. And that's correct. If you want the terabytes worth of space, with the photography plan that has Photoshop and both versions of Lightroom, you need to pay an additional $10 a month. Otherwise, you get 20 gigabytes of space. If
you're backing up all your photos to the Adobe CC using this new Lightroom, it doesn't take long for 1 terabyte to disappear.
Yeah, my library as it stands, all of my photos and whatnot are just under a terabyte. And that is just... That's not even actually all of my libraries, because I have a client library for the occasional client work that I do, and I have like a personal library, which is like family photos and stuff like that I have outside of my regular Lightroom. So it's easily over a gigabyte for me already. Jason says, yeah, I doubt it on hooking into other cloud storage because no money's in it for them, and they're going to want to keep the money to support their own data centers, 100%. Jason says, I also don't like editing on mobile, but that might change if I tried it on a large tablet with a stylus. Yeah, I've messed around with Lightroom mobile on my phone, and I don't mind it. Like, and what I was excited about was the idea that I could shoot raw photos with my phone and then edit them on my phone if I wanted to do something like right then and there. The idea behind this, of course, is that I can edit raw photos on my phone that I didn't shoot on my phone, have those edits synchronized to the cloud and show up on my computer here automatically. So I can actually, in theory, have a workflow that doesn't tie me to this computer and this desktop. And that's something that is kind of appealing to me. Not so much that I'm going to be jumping over into this, because I'm not. But it is something that I've always been a little frustrated with the older version of Lightroom, the other version, and the synchronization options that they offered, because any synchronization you wanted to do there had to be done. I'm going to switch over to this other version of Lightroom. You couldn't synchronize like all of these files and folders. What you would have to synchronize is your collections, and even that was annoying, because you have your collections here, like shoots and models and whatnot that I have, but you see all these little gear icons and all these collections. Those are what are called smart collections, which are collections that you create and use filters. So like if I right click on this Angela May and I go to edit smart collection, you can see that this is created by filtering all the photos that have the image label of yellow and the keyword of Angela May. And so it's essentially a search. And you have never been able to synchronize smart collections through Adobe, through their synchronization cloud to the mobile app. And I always thought that was stupid and frustrating. Now, I don't know what the actual synchronization limitations were that caused them to not be able to do that, but it always ticked me off, and that's why I never really went all in on their mobile app, working with the desktop app. Okay, Vincent says, Jeepers, this would annoy the holy crap out of me. I use the Lightroom 5.7 and it does the job, and that's fine. JC says, I love mobile. He says it's so much easier. I understand that, especially if you come up mobile first.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're used to. Like,
exactly.
I think I started with Lightroom 3, so to me it just feels natural. But for people who have always used the Lightroom mobile, or people who are just new to Lightroom, if they got in now with this new version, they'd probably feel that the version that we're using is archaic and floppy to use. So I think it's mostly comes down to what you're used to.
Yeah, yeah. And Johnny too. The other thing is, they designed this version of Lightroom here so that the editing workflow matches the mobile app. The idea being, if you're comfortable and your workflow is mobile first and you've been using Lightroom, then you will have a fairly seamless transition over to this desktop app, and be able to continue and take your workflow there. So that's what they're trying to do, and I understand that, and I think it's a smart thing for them to do. And that's why I also think it was smart that they did this as a completely separate app. I believe this is the future of Lightroom, and eventually this will be the only version of Lightroom. But I think it's going to be a while before that happens, because we have people like most of us, you, Mark, me, and everybody else, Jason, who prefer the organization of these files and folders that we're used to, and the fact that this organization scheme is independent of Lightroom. Like if I uninstall Lightroom, all of my photos are still organized exactly how I want them into these files and folders, so that I can find the things that I want to find. Whereas with Lightroom CC, this new version, like I'm locked into their library, and to get these into a different application would be difficult, to say the least. Okay, so Jason said, any idea on presets in the new Lightroom? Yes, definitely. So let me show you a couple of other things real quick, because one of the things that this application is doing is automatically synchronizing your stuff to the cloud. When you import images in here, this cloud icon will automatically start uploading those to your cloud storage. And when it does that, it doesn't, this is an interesting thing. It does not automatically upload, it does automatically upload them to the cloud, but then it does not automatically download them to every device that you have. They're available on every device, but when I'm looking at all of these thumbnails right now, the vast majority of these images are actually uploaded to the cloud, and I'm just seeing these thumbnails here. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go back to the Finder here, and those images are from the shoot that I did on the 13th, Friday the 13th, with Angela. Some of you guys watched us do this photo shoot in the studio. And when I go to the Finder window and I look at the folder for the 13th here, there are only 3 images in there. And these are the 3 images that earlier I double-clicked in order to look at in full view. When I did that, the software automatically downloaded them to the computer. So right now I've just got these 3 here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab another one of the images at random. I'll just grab this one right here and double-click it. And in doing so, you see it's taking a moment here. And now, when I go back to that folder, I think that was one I had already downloaded. Is that 96? I can't see the file number, so I don't know. All right, so I'm just going to grab one I know isn't downloaded. That one right there. This one now will show up in that folder. Now none of them are doing it. I did this earlier with Mark and I saw it download. Maybe I need to actually go into the develop module. So I just hit D and that didn't do anything. So apparently that shortcut is dead. I'm just switching back and forth. All right. So your developing tools are over here on the right. Let's just go into the develop. And when I click this, this expands our options. And you can see we have the sliders, and these are similar to what you are used to in Lightroom. We have exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, blacks. These are all familiar sliders. They took white balance and combined it with vibrance and saturation under a color tab. But we're also missing some. We have clarity and dehaze and vignette. That's great. We have detail, which is also great. We have our optics, which is radically simplified. You simply have a check mark for removing chromatic aberration or not, and then you can enable lens correction, and then we actually get a drop down. And then we have geometry, which is transforming the image, like straightening and fixing perspective. The curves tool is gone, and the hue, saturation, and luminance tools are completely gone as well. But down here at the bottom, Jason, is the presets button. Oh, webcam's in the way. Sorry about that, guys. Let me switch the view so that Mark and my heads are out of your way. My apologies. There we go. So now you guys should be able to see it. Okay, so down here we've got the detail, these optics, geometry, and then at the very bottom here you have your presets. And when I click that preset option, you can see these built-in presets show up. We have color, we have creative, we have black and white. Because not every single tool has been ported over into this version of Lightroom, I do not know if you can take your existing presets and bring them over to this version of Lightroom. That's something I wasn't able to find any information on in the digging that I was doing initially. But presets...
If I had to guess, I would say no, but that would be just literally just a guess.
I would guess too. Jason, it's okay. Please ask the questions. That's why we're here. That's why we wanted to do this. We want to give everybody an opportunity to see you know, how this works. Jason says, well, there goes the preset business.
No, it'll probably be new presets is my guess.
Oh, hello, Natasha Rawls. Thanks for joining. Yeah, so those presets are available, and this is kind of neat too. As I hover over a preset, it shows you the changes that it makes in all of the sliders. That's kind of a neat thing. So all of this stuff is here, but it is simplified, and though the sliders are the same, they have a different look, you know, and everything's going to work basically the same. So, like, you know, I'm just going to very quickly do, you know, a little bit of messing around on this image here. Open up the shadows, whatever. I'm not changing the color, pop the saturation a bit, blah, blah, blah. You have your crop tool over here on the side, and this is kind of interesting how it keeps sort of refreshing this image here. And I'm wondering now if that finally downloaded that image. Yep, it finally did actually download that 4th image. So you can see that it pulls it down when it actually needs it and when you're going to kind of work on it and use it wherever it is. One of the other things I'll tell you that I'm not liking is the fact that you don't see the cell information that you used to have. What's the button next to the before after toggle button on the bottom? This one right here hides the film strip or shows the film strip. And I always like to hide the film strip. I hate having the film strip taking up a little bit of that extra image space on the bottom, so I always have that hidden. Then you have your zoom.
Around, I like to see the film strip.
Do ya? That's funny.
Yeah.
You have the zoom option, which you can have it zoom 1:1. You can have it fill, and you can have it fit. And then to zoom further, you actually have to like manually zoom the image. So you have your cropping. You can change your aspect ratio just like you used to be able to, including custom ratios. You have a straighten, you have rotate and flipping tools right here. Here you have your healing brush tool. Yeah, got it, Adobe. I don't need your... And the same clone and heal options with the size and feather and opacity options for your brush. Excuse me. So you still have powerful tools here. You still have a lot of Lightroom's tools, but they're stripping out a lot of the organization stuff in order to be able to cloud it. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious. So these files that we're looking at right here.
Yeah.
Did you take the raw files and did you do the raw files on the computer you're currently on, or was it on your other computer and you're downloading them through the CC?
These are being downloaded. Yeah, that's a good question. These images from the shoot I did here with Angela, I imported into Lightroom CC on my laptop. And
not on this computer.
Not on this computer. And because I have a good 150 megabit per second connection, they uploaded quite quickly. And now I am accessing them through the cloud here on this computer that they were not originally imported to or downloaded onto. And that's one of the pluses that I see for this. As an example, when I do these live photo shoots in the studio, I sometimes use Lightroom to tether rather than just using the Olympus software. And if I were to do that and I was using this version of Lightroom, they would automatically then be available here on this computer for me. I wouldn't have to bring in my memory card, plug it in, and go through the whole import process. So like that's something that I like the idea of. So Jason just asked, I wonder how that works on mobile because I don't want huge RAW files downloaded onto my tablet or phone. What will happen on your mobile device is you will have a smart preview downloaded to your device, which is it's essentially a very small RAW file. And that allows you to make the edits to the image without, having like 20 or 30 megabyte RAW files on your phone. And then those changes through the catalog file are synchronized back up to the cloud and throughout the devices and the images in the catalog. How do you get it to tether in RAW? That's a really good question. I don't even know if this version supports tethering. So add photos, search, save to, send to Facebook, edit in Photoshop. Nope. Undo switch view, copy albums, stacks, make a copy. Nope. Photo, star ratings, set flags, copy. Nope. View. Nothing there. Window, close to minimal. Nothing at all. So you can't even tether with this version of Lightroom.
At least not that you can find anyway.
Not that I can find, but in the other version, it's right under File. So let's just switch over to the older version of Lightroom, and we go to File, and you have your tether capture right here. So I'm willing to bet money that you just flat out cannot tether with this version of Lightroom here. So Mike says, I'm just starting to learn Lightroom. Any suggestions? I mean, one suggestion, you could check out my video course on it if you want some help learning it. It's $69. It's a total deal. I think, obviously, I think that.
Of course you do.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, I do have some Lightroom videos on my channel that you could check out, Mike. Otherwise, YouTube is a great resource. But I honestly, if you want to learn it as quickly as possible and cover not just like how to use it, but also like how best to handle organizing in a way that works for you and whatnot, check out my video course. I think it's something that's worth checking out. Let me just drop the link in the chat here for you guys.
Yeah, another thing, I guess there a question for you, Spyros, just for clarification.
Mm-hmm.
This new version the Lightroom, the Lightroom CC, not the Lightroom Classic. The CC version, if you're on the current $9 subscription, there's no extra cost, right?
Yeah, give me just a moment here to pop this in here. Did I spell that right? Lightroom, Lightroom, not Lightroom. Okay, so the question was, ask that again now that I can listen.
Now you can concentrate.
Yes.
So, you've got the Lightroom Classic and the new Lightroom CC.
Yes.
You didn't pay extra. You didn't add anything to your CC subscription, correct?
No, that is absolutely correct. If you are already subscribed to Lightroom's photography plan, where you have Lightroom and Photoshop plus the 20 gigabytes of cloud storage, you now have available to you Lightroom, Photoshop, you have Photoshop, Lightroom CC Classic, which is this version of Lightroom right here that we're used to and love and or hate, or both at the same time, depending upon the day and how well it's working. And you have Lightroom CC, which is this new cloud-focused version.
Right.
And
so, okay, so then the other question then is I remember reading or you mentioning about a different plan where it's like $20 for just the CC version, but you get more storage space. Is that correct?
The other plan, yes, is just the Lightroom CC version, which is this stripped down cloud-focused version we're looking at, and you get 1 terabyte of storage space for synchronizing your photos through the cloud.
Right, but it was more money too, was it not?
No, it's $9.99.
Oh,
I mean,
okay,
it is a separate, different $9.99 subscription plan that has only Lightroom CC and that 1 terabyte of space. And then,
so if you don't care about the terabyte of storage space, you're better to get the photographer's package then.
That is correct. And if you want,
that's
I
why I thought I just wanted to be 100% sure. This is for everyone else watching.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing to clarify. And then if you do want the terabyte of space with the photography plan, you can pay an extra $10 a month to Adobe. That then takes your subscription price for Lightroom CC, which is the new version, Photoshop, and the terabyte. That cost is $19.99 per month.
Right, okay.
I was kind of bummed out because when I was first reading about Lightroom CC this morning, one of the articles I read had incorrect information saying that for the photography plan, you could pay an extra $5 a month for that terabyte of space. Right. I was honestly ready to do that, but the $10, I was like, I mean, it's only $5 more, but I was for like for $14.99 a month. For me, that was a no-brainer.
Right.
For $20 a month, $19.99, I'm not ready to jump into it because I don't know how much I'm going to use this CC version versus, I want to use both because it's my opinion that this version, this new Lightroom CC version, is the future of Lightroom as Adobe sees it, and that this eventually will be the only version available.
Right. Plus, being an educator, you need to know what the options are.
Yes.
And I'm sort of the same way. Like, will I use it? Probably not as my main editing thing, but I'll probably install it just to play with it to get a feel for it. Because, like you said, probably eventually it will go that way.
Right.
For me, the biggest issue is the creative, like the cloud storage of the files, because as everyone knows, anyone who watches this blab on a regular basis knows that's one thing I complain about is my crappy internet.
Right.
And trying to upload raw files from a big shoot when your upload speed is 0.6, that's going to just take way too long. So I'm not sure how people are going to manage that. Unless technology changes and people like me are able to get better internet speeds further down the road.
Right, right, and that's a huge point that I know Adobe recognizes that exists. There's no way that they don't know about that, and I'm sure that's also part of the reason. Yeah, I'm sure that's part of the reason both of these different versions of Lightroom still currently exist. I don't know this for certain, but John asked, I wonder if you don't have enough storage, if the app would not allow you to import. I can't say this 100% for sure, but I feel very confident in saying the app will absolutely allow you to import, but it will not upload and synchronize if you are out of storage space. And what that means is
locally.
Yeah, they'll only be stored locally on that one computer. And like if you go to your other computers, you might see the previews of those images, but you probably won't have access to download and or edit those images because you don't have enough cloud storage space.
Yeah, if you could run this version of Lightroom CC just locally, which you probably can, and we just haven't played with it yet. Well, I haven't played with it at all. Then I'd probably be more tempted to use it on a more regular basis. But if you have no choice but to sync with the cloud, then that'll definitely be a no-go for me.
I believe you have no option, because when I imported the files, it automatically synced, although we do have a setting options here. So what does this say? Account, manage account, local storage. You can tell it how much of your available disk space you want it to use. The idea of this actually being that you can upload files to the cloud and clear them off of your hard drive. You can tell it to store a copy of all originals locally, which means if I wanted it to, I think this means it would download them all. Let's just check that. Changes take effect after restarting. I'm going to restart it and see if that means it will now download all files from the cloud to this computer. Is it restarting on its own?
For me, I'm thinking more if I import, having them not upload is basically kind of more what I'm thinking, because I only have one computer anyway, so it's not like I'm going to be doing editing on my phone or another computer, because I only have the one.
Right. Okay, so it says here synchronizing 120 photos. I have a feeling it's downloading all of the rest of the photos from the Angela shoot. Let's just take a look into my files here and see if more of these start popping up. I don't see anything yet, so we'll pop back into that for a minute. Yep, there, one just popped up. There they come. So by doing that, I'm telling it to automatically synchronize everything across every device.
Right.
Which...
Well, not necessarily every device, maybe just
this device.
Have separate settings on each computer,
probably. Yeah, I think you're right, because I just set that on this device, but not on the other device.
Right.
So, but it looks to me like there's no way to turn off the synchronization option. You can only, account, local storage, and then general are our settings options here.
Right.
I don't see anything that says like turn off sync. I did see you do have the option to pause syncing.
Right.
But that's a really clunky way to do it. If you are, constantly, every time you launch, you got to pause the synchronization because you don't want it to synchronize. Especially if you're on a metered connection where you only have, like, are you on do you have a certain amount of bandwidth?
No, I'm not metered. It's more
just the speed.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mike says, I just started Lightroom CC. Now, because of this stupid naming confusion that they created, do you mean this version of Lightroom that we've been talking about, or what is now called Lightroom CC Classic, which is this version of Lightroom, Mike? Because if you're using the brand new version that was just released today that we've been talking about, then do not buy my course, because that currently doesn't cover this new version of Lightroom CC. That gets back to Sandy's question, which is, does your video course have updates for new Lightroom features as they become available? And like this is the newest update to Lightroom, and as of right now, because it's literally today, I haven't added. But my plan was, yes, to add updates to my course as new features come available to this version of Lightroom. I'm honestly also planning to do a supplemental set of videos covering this new Lightroom CC so people are aware of it and what it is and how it works. Okay, so Mike says, I don't know, I signed up on Tuesday. If you signed up on Tuesday, then we're talking about this version of Lightroom. It's the photography plan, and you actually now have both versions of Lightroom, but this is the one that you were using, which is now called Lightroom Classic CC.
And that's what your course covers.
And this is what my course covers. And unless you actively install the new version of Lightroom, which confusingly again is now called Lightroom CC, it will only show up on your computer if you actively install it, which you would do by going up or down if you have Windows, but going to your Creative Cloud software and going under the Apps tab and then clicking the install option for this Lightroom CC app, which I have already done. Lightroom Classic CC is the regular version of Lightroom that everybody is used to using up until this point. Somebody mentioned this earlier, and I forgot to read that comment, that Bridge also received an update. Bridge works along with Photoshop, and it's sort of like a proto Lightroom. That got an update to be faster and better. I've never used Bridge. I've never liked it, so I don't have it installed, but I know there are a lot of people who do really like using the Bridge.
Yeah, I think the people who don't typically use Lightroom use Bridge just to go directly into Photoshop.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Vincent says, how do I back up to external hard drives to have belts and braces, and say you decide to quit the CC next year, what then? And he says, has Adobe changed the nature of the RAW off the camera to Adobe? Okay, so those are excellent questions. So first of all, how do you back up to external hard drives? You would take, let's go back to my pictures folder. You would take this file, which again is a container, and you would back this up to your external hard drives and or your online backup service, Backblaze or whatever you might happen to use. So this contains all of the photos. That's how you would back it up. Now, as to what happens if you stop subscribing to Adobe CC, my guess is it would be similar to what happens with Lightroom, which is you have rudimentary access to your photos, meaning you have access to the actual files. They're not locking you out of your images, but you won't have access to the features and functions of the software, the adjustments, and the other tools. And they have not changed the nature of the RAW files. When they are imported, especially in the new version here, in the new version, when you import, your only option is to click the plus button and pick the photos wherever they might be, hard drive or SD card from your camera, and then it imports them into the library. In the old version, and this is important, when you import in the old version here, one of the options you do have is to copy as a DNG file. And the DNG file is Adobe's crack at creating a universal RAW file standard that they want everybody to use, but thankfully everybody doesn't use. I would be okay with it if it were a truly open format and standard format that was, like not proprietary, that the code and everything behind it was open. But that is not the case. They essentially give it away for free so that people will use it, and it makes things easier for them. And that's why Adobe created the DNG. Now, whether or not you are subscribed to either of those plans for Lightroom CC or the photography plan, they cannot lock up your files on your computer. They're always there. And if you have this library file and I don't know how this works on Windows, but on the Mac, you know, you just go to show package contents, and I can go in here and I can quite literally manipulate and find and grab and work with the files that I might want. So
assuming they've been downloaded.
Yeah, assuming they've been downloaded. And that's a good point. Like, I would imagine if you stop paying, they might lock you out of your cloud. So these are yeah, these are really excellent questions, and that's a good argument for setting the settings on any or all of, or at least one of your computers, to have everything downloaded to that computer so that you have the files locally. Now, one of the other things I saw when we were looking at these settings here that I wanted to explore while we're talking about this is under General, or was it Local Storage, originals are currently stored in the default location. I'm going to choose Change Location, and I'm going to try something. So I'm going to just create a test LRCC folder and create that, and I'm going to choose this as the location for the files. And now I'm using a default, this is my new default location that I changed. And I'm going to go Done. In order to apply, you must restart. Of course, you must restart. But you said it uploaded to the cloud off your home system. Yeah, it uploads them, but it keeps the copy locally unless you tell it. Again, let's take a look at this. So we're getting this loaded up. We're going to go back into those preferences that we were just looking at. Ooh, it moved them. Okay, this is curious and good in a way. You can see here it's moving the photos to that new folder that I told it to store them in. So it looks like it's possible to extract them from that catalog file so that you literally have the files and folders available to you externally outside of their catalog file. I'm guessing...
You'll have to look to see whether it is just the files or whether it moved the whole catalog and everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. Did it just move the photos, or did it move... Okay, no, here's the library catalog file. Here's test Lightroom CC, originals, and the files over here in a completely separate folder. So, but it looks like I'm
still in there.
That's what I was just about to look at. They are not in here anymore. It is curious that despite the fact that I just moved them all out, that the file size is still 7.5 gigabytes. So we go back to pictures and I click on it, it shows us down here it's still 7.5 gigabytes, as if all of those photos are still inside there.
Maybe it has to do some background cleaning or something.
Yeah, maybe. So this is a way to move them outside of that if you don't want them in a catalog container, which I think is a smart way to go. But to Vincent's point about it uploading them, it does upload them. And here you have this local storage, and I'm going to turn off that option to store a copy of all locals originally. And the reason I want to do that is because here you have this target available disk space usage. And it says here, storage strategy: increase the amount of local storage to let Lightroom CC retain more content on your computer. Decrease the amount if you prefer to save disk space by downloading content when you need it. So what this means is, I believe if you were to restrict this very low, in fact, let's try this. I'm going to restrict this to the lowest possible setting, 0%. Let's just see what it does. In order to apply the current settings, you must restart. And I'm willing to bet it's going to delete those files, and they are going to be strictly maintained in the cloud, and they will only be downloaded on demand. That's a guess, though. Let's see what happens here. Well, they're still here.
I wonder if it's because you took them out of that catalog.
That's possible. Those DNG files you see are smartphone files. The library is still 7.49 gigabytes. So I don't see any change here, but my guess is if you were working on a small hard drive, you would start to see photos that are being deliberately offloaded to your cloud storage. I still have 1.24 terabytes of space on this computer available, so maybe it's not freaking out because I've got a lot of space. Not a lot, but I've got a fair amount of space available on this hard drive. But I don't see anything being deleted off of here as of yet.
How big is that folder with all the files in it?
Let's take a look at that and see. That is currently 8.18 gigabytes. It is still very odd that the Lightroom library file is as big as it is with all of those being extracted out of it.
Yeah, well, maybe the Lightroom catalog is maybe the majority of the size of it is.
It's probably all the smart previews.
The program and all the all the accessories. Because when you check the file size, was that before you turned on the sync for it to download everything? So if that's the case, then that might make sense because you didn't check the size after you downloaded everything.
Right, that's a good point. Vincent said, did it copy rather than extract and move? I'm pretty sure it moved them because let's go back into these contents again. When I go back into that same folder, we've got all the catalog files, and then under originals, there's nothing there anymore, and this is where those files were before. We have previews in here, and these previews are small files, so these are very, very small files. We have proxies, and these are larger, 1.4 megabytes.
Probably like smart previews versions or something.
Yeah, so temporary edits, yeah, we have different stuff here that I'm not familiar with. So I'm not sure what it is that's creating the giant size of that catalog file. I'd have to, like, you know, dig through it bit by bit to try to figure it out. But if I go here, so I'm just going to start with that folder. This folder alone is 1.04 gigabytes, the one that has the catalog and the proxies and everything else in it.
Yeah, even the old Lightroom, the catalog file itself was always a huge size.
Yeah, yeah, but it did move them rather than copy them, which...
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say probably if you kept them in the catalog, then probably that setting where you set it to 0 would have probably made a difference, but because of the fact that you moved them, that maybe it doesn't see it as being part of the catalog per se anymore.
That's a good possibility. Yeah, well, let's you know, we're experimenting with this. These are all photos that I'm playing with and that are not
if they blow up, you don't care? Yeah,
because I have them in my actual, you know, catalog. Now, here's the curious thing. I can't choose the library. How do I... Oh, here I click Use Default Location.
Oh, okay.
And I am going to store a copy of all original locally unchecked. And I'm going to have target disk space set to 0. And we'll hit Done. We'll restart again. And let's see what that does. One of the other things I wanted to look at here is the export options. And a couple of things. So checking photos, moving your photos. So it's putting back into, I think, into the catalog file.
Putting back so it can delete them.
Yeah, probably. But one of the other things I noticed is that there's no, to the best of my understanding, there's no plugin support for this version of Lightroom either. So you've been able to extend the functionality of Lightroom Classic by adding plugins, things like hooking into you know, the Topaz software or Google's Nick collection.
Right.
I have a couple of plugins that I use in my exporting. I've got this LRMogrify that I use to add borders, to add text, and do things to images. There's another plugin I use. What is it? Let me just go to my plugins file. Where's my plugin manager? This JFolder Publisher, something that I used, which was really handy. Things like the Canon Tether plugin, the Aperture, you know, these different plugins appear to not exist and not be supported in any way in this new version of Lightroom. Hey, Tim, how's it going, bud? Just see you got here. Okay, so in the one aspect that drove me nutty was the print module. That was a circle of hell. Yeah, I never used the print module in Lightroom Classic here. I think this print module is a piece of garbage.
I've used it, but basically I sort of, after I created a specific template that I print regularly, then I actually save the template so that I can just click on it and I don't have to worry about it. But if I'm doing something new where I want to do like multiple pictures and on one sheet, it is a bit of a pain to try and figure things out if you don't do it on a regular basis because it's not that intuitive.
Right. Yeah, I've always just printed outside of Lightroom by exporting my photos and then, you know, going from there. So it looks like everything's done here. Let's go back now to that catalog file and see what we find. So again, back to pictures. This test LRCC is now empty, so I'm just gonna I'm not gonna delete it just in case we decide to flip it back again for some reason. Let's go back into the package contents and back to originals, and now we have originals in here again. And again, it doesn't appear that anything has been deleted up to this point. So it's
zero must not be zero, must just be
a
real small number like 1.
Yeah. Sorry, the question was, is it any better than the new one? Well, here's the print mod. So the print module in Lightroom Classic, I'm pretty sure is the exact same print module. The new version of Lightroom CC, doesn't even have a print module. Whoops, I went to the wrong place. Yeah. I mean, you can go, let's see, File, Save, Edit in Photoshop, Migrate Lightroom Catalog, just delete, Photo, Star, Pick Flag.
Export, maybe export as a print, maybe.
Edit, Photo Grid, Square, Grid, Close Window. There is no print option in this software. You can add photos, you can search, you can save, edit in Photoshop, album stacks, copies. There's no print option available. There's definitely no print module available in this software. So like this is stripped out the book module. This is stripped out the map module. The slideshow module is gone. The print module is gone. The web module. This is basically a stripped down version of the library and develop modules. This new Lightroom CC software is.
I'll definitely have to install it and play with it because I print pretty much exclusively out of Lightroom, so I'll have to. There's got to be a way to do it. It's just a matter of figuring out how, I would think.
And it looks here like this export tool is also incredibly rudimentary. So it's not even export. You have this save to option for getting your images out, like as JPEGs or something like that. So when you go save to, then you have this. I can't even move this window. You can change the file type. You either have JPEG or original plus the settings. You can't even export as a TIFF file. And then you can choose your location. And that's just picking the folder. And then small, full size, or it does give you a custom value with the long edge. So this is a very, very, very rudimentary export tool. With very limited options in it. Nothing at all like the export tool you have available in the regular Lightroom Classic version, which gives you the option to create presets and save export presets so you can quickly and immediately export a file of a certain size for a certain use.
Yeah, my guess is with it being brand new, there'll probably be a lot of quick updates over the next month or so, because stuff like that, if people complain about it, they're going to obviously, I would think that add it back in.
Mm-hmm. So I'm creating a folder. I'm just doing a very quick test.
John just said the same thing I just said.
Yeah. I'm trying the batch export right now. I selected a handful of files. I did a custom size JPEG exporting to this test folder on my hard drive. I'm sure it'll do all of them. So you can batch export, but it's going to be very rudimentary. Yeah.
It seems to be kind of like one step forward, 2 steps back in some ways.
Yeah. Clearly what they've done here is they stripped out everything that got in the way of them being able to streamline this synchronization and the cloud stuff that they want to focus on here. And they've also stripped everything out that wasn't also available in the mobile apps to a large degree, because they want that to be, like they said in the language, a seamless experience from the mobile app to the desktop app and back again to the web app too. And they even, part of the reason they changed the order of these editing tools is it matches the order of the editing tools in your mobile app. So all of these sliders are in the same order as you'll find them on your app, rather than, you know, being in the custom order that they were in the regular version of Lightroom over here. Well, let me get out of this print module. And that's also why they took out the curves tool, the HSL tool. They took out split toning as well. That's gone. You know, the effects, a lot of that stuff is gone because they want to focus on this mobile strategy. I agree with what you said too, Mark. My feeling is that they stripped out everything, and then they'll add features back in as they can develop the software around this cloud, you know, model that they're trying to build with it.
Yeah, I would agree. I suspect that, like I said, they'll add things as they go to build it back up. But I know when they were originally talking about developing this new version of Lightroom, what they want to do is make it faster. So it's probably the only way they could make it faster was to strip it down and get rid of all the modules that that were slowing it down.
Yeah, exactly.
And keep it rudimentary, just the bare bones.
Mm-hmm. So the batch export did work. I selected that handful of files and used the export option, and it exported all of them based on the parameters that I set. So I just deleted those because I don't need them anymore. The thing that I don't care for is I wonder too, like, can you create album? You can create a folder. So folders help you organize your albums. So that would allow me, within the software at least, to maintain like my normal rename structure that I use. I'm just doing this now to kind of replicate that, where I have the year, and then within the year I have the month. I want to put these inside of that, and the particular subject or topic that is, that I can kind of collapse and whatnot. It's still, I don't like the fact that it is not the actual folders, but because they're going mobile first here, I understand why they did it that way. Oh, here's the save to, and then they have like send to Facebook, which, I mean, I don't know.
Facebook, but you can't export easily.
Yeah, I just want to see what the send to Facebook looks like. Link to your Facebook account. To share your photos, of course, you have to authorize it, and then you just enter a caption, and that's it. So, I mean, I guess if you want to use that, I'm just gonna cancel out of that. It's similar to the whoops, I meant to stay back in that other version of Lightroom. It's similar to these tools down here. Where are they? Way down here. These published services that they have in the Lightroom Classic CC version, but obviously they just have Facebook, and I can't imagine they're going to add. I can't imagine they're not going to add support for the additional things that other photographer use, like SmugMug, Flickr, you know, Zenfolio, whatever other services are out there. Some of those are plugins that those companies made for Lightroom, so they might need to add the plugin support to this. It's curious to see how much of what's already exists in Lightroom Classic they're going to bring into Lightroom CC.
Yeah, I agree. I love just had a question, which is sort of the same thing I was thinking too. Is asking what about X-Rite color checker support, and I use that as well too, and I know a lot of photographers use that to make sure they get their colors accurate and everything. So so my guess is the support's probably not there yet, but I imagine X-Rite is probably working on something to get it to work.
Yeah, how does that work? Because I don't have or use one, so I don't know how it integrates.
Yeah, it is. It's basically a plugin, is what it is.
Okay, then yeah, right now no support for that in this version of Lightroom CC. Yeah, this is definitely like the stripped down, simplified.
Bare bone.
Yeah, you have the option to copy your developed settings and paste them. Revert to original. You can see the histogram if you want it. You can turn on single panel mode. You can edit into Photoshop, but I don't see any option to hook into those other, because in the Lightroom Classic version you can add edit in options. So in addition to editing in Photoshop, you can edit in Nik plugin software. You can edit it in, you know, whatever. But here it's like only Photoshop. Like you can only edit it in Photoshop. It's interesting. The more I've been going through this and playing with it tonight,
it leaves more questions than anything.
Yeah, it leaves a lot more questions than anything. And this is clearly a first step. This is clearly a first step in what they want Lightroom to become. How quickly they'll get it there, I'm curious to see that. I would hope to see very rapid development, but I don't know. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think if they want serious photographers, like especially like even guys who are just starting out, somewhat, but not as much as the serious high-end photographers, if they want Lightroom to cater to them, I don't think they're going to have any choice but to add at least some of these things back in that were in the original Lightroom.
Yeah, that's my exact feeling. I can tell you right now.
Otherwise, they're going to have some issues, and people are going to be leaving in a big hurry, especially if they discontinue support of the older, like of the Lightroom Classic, as they're calling it now.
Yeah, there's no way I would migrate to this right now. Like, there's just flat out no way at all.
Right.
I like the idea. Here's what I like most about the idea of this. Right now, I have hacked my own way of keeping my edits, like finished edited images, on my phone and up to date, so that I have access to my final edit photos, so I can show people, so I can share them when I want to share them, so I can not make an emergency phone call on accident, things like that. And what I end up doing is, and this is the best solution I've found. I've tried many different synchronization and other solutions to give me what I wanted, and none of them worked the way I wanted them to work. And what I do is after I edit an image in the Lightroom Classic version, here, once I finish editing an image in here, I run an export preset. That export preset generates 3 different versions of a file, 4 different versions of a file. It generates a full resolution, a social media optimized version, and a squared off version for Instagram. And those all get put into a folder where they go up to Google Drive. It also drops a full resolution version into a folder that I then run an action on my phone on to download that image to my phone. And that sounds like clunky, and it is kind of clunky, but it's the best way I found to keep my images the way I wanted to. And what I was attracted to when I first, started reading about this today was the idea that I could potentially have my catalog and my photos in this software and have them automatically organized and edited on my phone without me having to do any work at all. It would have been everything. Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, the thing I wonder about is if they're sort of going for this sort of technology, I guess, for lack of a better term, where they're sort of wanting you to be able to work from this workstation, that workstation, your phone, or whatever the case is. With the current Lightroom, you can really only have Lightroom installed on 2 computers. So I wonder if that is the same with this new version, or whether they're a little bit more, they're going to be more lenient, so you can basically have it on any computer as long as you're only using one at a time.
Because it's part of the photography plan, I'm willing to bet money you're still going to be limited to 2 different computers. But the mobile app, you have no limit on.
Right.
You know, if you have 5 different mobile devices, you can put that mobile app in all 5 of them.
Right.
And that's where I think they're, you know, thinking that they're going to get this seamless experience across these devices and this mobile kind of, you know, work life that people always have their phones. So like if you're sitting there and you want to go through and call a photo shoot, you can do that on your phone. If you want to do some edits on your phone and then come back and have them, you can do that. And now it's actually really genuinely going to synchronize. Whereas in this classic version of Lightroom, in order to do that, you had to import them into Lightroom on your computer here. You had to then come down into the collections and create a collection that was not a smart collection because smart collections won't sync. Manually select the images that you wanted available, like I'd have to select all of these, and then drag them into the collection, and then let Lightroom synchronize it or tell it that I wanted it to synchronize it. And then they would synchronize, and then I could finally edit them. Not at all seamless. It was a ton of work. It was super clunky and super terrible. So, you know, they've clearly made that better, but they've sacrificed, I would say, like 95% of the additional functionality you get outside of editing to make that happen in this beta version. And I Love made a funny comment that's also true, that they should call this the beta or the sucker version. And that, you know, that's true, and that's why they kept both versions around. Vincent says, I think Adobe are like IBM and giving out what they think will be good for them. I think they're trying the Microsoft game as well to get the subscription model with stuff. And that they're soon to be like the dinosaur.
That's a tough call because technology is kind of screaming everything to be online, but on the flip side, the older people like us who have been used to doing things the old-fashioned way, and my motto is change is bad. I can see it being a problem. So it's a catch-22. Like people will adapt if they want to continue using it, but that's if the functionality is not there. I think if the functionality is not there and not added, that's going to be the bigger problem than the cloud-based setup.
Right. Yeah. Here, 100%, because as is, pros are never going to use this. Like for more than very basic stuff, because it is very basic software and it doesn't give you the workflow that you want to have. You know, and I'm a perfect example. Like I very much like the idea of this cloud synchronization and seamless stuff. There's no way I could even use this because it would absolutely break my workflow and it would slow me down and it just flat out wouldn't work. But it should come. We don't know what they're going to do, but it should come.
Yeah.
So, Fulminato, I know I'm saying that wrong, and I apologize, says, I work in the cloud, and that's why I don't like the cloud. And then I asked why you don't. And he says, I like to be the owner of my stuff. Cloud is the computer of someone else. So, yes, that's true. And there's pluses and minuses to that. I want to share my thoughts on it. But, Mark, how do you feel about this direction of things in general?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of possible scenarios. Yes, I see the technology going that way, but on the flip side, like I said before, for people who have limited bandwidth, it's a problem.
Right.
The other thing is, say you have something on the cloud, let's say on Adobe, for example, and Adobe gets hacked, and suddenly your stuff is potentially accessible by people who you don't want it accessed by. And the other thing is, just for example, I don't see it happening, but say just all of a sudden out of the blue, Adobe decides to close the doors. Then you're basically, if they close the doors just like that and don't tell anybody, then your stuff is basically potentially gone. So
right.
So that's definitely the bigger downfall of it, the way I look at it.
Yeah, yeah, I understand those concerns, and in a lot of ways, we are making deals with the devil here. I like.
But that being said, having
Mhm.
stuff locally at home, something could potentially happen as well too. Your hard drive fails and you don't have a backup, or heaven forbid, your house burns down and you lose everything. It's at least if it was on the cloud, if that was to happen, then at least you have access to the files.
Right.
So it's a catch-22 no matter how you look at it, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I think of the cloud in two ways. Like, number one, Fulminato is actually right. Like, the cloud is just another computer somewhere else. It's a different computer that is owned by and maintained by whichever service you happen to be using, whether it's Google's computers or Dropbox's or Adobe's. It's a different computer that is somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
The deal with the devil is the fact that, if you're not paying that perpetual payment, then you can't use the stuff. And I get the idea that you want to own the thing. I see that. I do see that, especially with this idea that, like, you've paid for it and it's yours, and, like, you don't have to pay for it again, and you can continue to use it, and literally until it breaks and it doesn't work on your computer anymore. Like, it just, when whomever that currently is using Lightroom 5 or Lightroom 6, you're still using it, and you can continue to use it until it literally will no longer load and or work on whichever computer you happen to be working on. And there's definitely an appeal to that, because that is software that, while you actually technically don't own it based on the stupid licensing agreements and all that BS, you own it in the sense that it is yours and it will not stop working because you are not continually paying for a thing. I get that. And the reason I like the plan that Adobe has here is because you're distributing a cost out over time, and with that distribution of the cost, you've always got the up-to-date version. And over that time, based on the calculations that I did, it is actually cheaper than paying for the standalone versions of the same software, even though I technically owned that software when I did pay for it as a standalone version and could use it, into perpetuity. So I get that. I really do get that. I don't have an answer for that. I'm willing to make that deal with the devil. Other people aren't, and I respect that. I'm not going to try to tell somebody you should do it if you don't want to do it. So there's that aspect of the cloud. The other aspect is the storage of the files, and I like the cloud for that. I recognize the risks of the cloud, and that's actually why that I use a particular service that some of you might not have heard of. It's called Spyros, and it is a backup and synchronization service, and everything is fully hashed and encrypted. The Spyros people, like, they have zero knowledge of what I store on their servers. And I like them because they are a privacy-first company. They are an encrypted-first company. And from the get-go, they wanted you to pay. And the reason I'm actually okay with that is because I know that by paying them, like, I'm not the customer, right? Like with Google, you pay nothing or next to nothing because the information they gather from us is the payment to Google. And Vincent said here, I trust Google far more than any of the rest of them. And in a way, I do too. But at the same time, I don't like the fact that Google or Dropbox or Apple or any of these other services are as vulnerable and hackable as they are. And every service is vulnerable and hackable. But at least with this Spyros service that I'm using, like, everything is encrypted and hashed. And, they might get my files, but it's going to be gibberish, and they won't be able to do anything with it anyway. You know what I mean? So that's just my little, like, side thought on like cloud storage, and you have to evaluate those risks for yourself, and you have to evaluate the trade-offs and whether or not you should make those deals with the devil.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be a choice. Yeah.
Yeah. What works for me doesn't necessarily work for Spyros, which doesn't necessarily work for Vincent, which doesn't necessarily work. So it can go on and on and on. Everyone's way of doing things and thoughts about things are completely different. So that's basically just a matter of doing what's best for you.
Yep, that's exactly it. You got to do what's best for you. So Vincent says, I trust Google far more than the rest of them. That's what we were just talking about. Mike says, give away the razor, sell the blades. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's basically the plan. And then he follows up and he says, any company can go under or merge. And that is absolutely true. There's always a risk of that. There's nothing you can do about that. And then Leroy has a question. Should I download the classic version? I just subscribed to Photoshop and Lightroom 6 weeks ago. So Lightroom Classic is an update to the version of Lightroom that you have been using already, Leroy. And you can...
It's not going to hurt to do it.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt to do it. There's also now in your apps list available. We talked about this again, but I'll recap it real quick. You have Lightroom Classic, which is the version you've been currently using, and the new Lightroom CC version, which is this version we've been talking about for the bulk of the last hour and a half, which is a very stripped down cloud focus first. So you can definitely download the classic version. It's not going to meaningfully change the workflows you've already established. And in theory, it's supposed to actually speed up those workflows by making the program faster and better. So yes, you can update to that. I already updated this computer to that. I haven't had time to play with you know, that version, which is this one right here, to see if it is meaningfully faster, but it at least opened and appears to be functional, so that's a good thing. Yeah, yeah. Mike says, think about the stuff on your computer 10 or 20 years ago. What did you need permanently? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Mike, but if you're talking about, like, you know, wanting or needing or being able to access your files and folders in 20 years, that's one of the reasons I also do export all of my images as JPEG files, the final edits, and have those final edits saved in a number of different locations, so that if for some reason, like, everything just disappeared, I'm still going to at least have my final edits, unless, you know, like, I have catastrophic failures across a number of different services and several locations burned down at the same time. But yeah,
with Trump, you never know. It could just be one big nuclear missile, and where you go.
Then it all happens, and we're all done anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Delta Dave says, if Lightroom went away tomorrow, I couldn't care less. You have Capture One, Corel, Aftershock Pro, On One Photo Raw, all much better raw editors. I don't know if I agree with all. I've heard Capture One is better. I've never tried it. So I don't know. I have tried On One Photo Raw, and at least for my Olympus RAW files, it was not a better RAW photo editor at all. The RAW photos look terrible in On One Photo Raw. There's also, like, Luminar is another new one that came out. I think that's a Mac only. I mean, there's
always something being added to the arsenal.
Yeah, and that competition is good, and I want more of that. So you know, that's a good thing.
Everybody else in check.
Yeah, because that's gonna keep them in check, and it's also going to force Adobe to be better and to make better software, and we want that. So I want more better options, 100%, and that's why I do look at them. Like, I tried On One Photo Raw to see if I liked it, to see if it worked. I haven't tried Capture One, but I have thought about trying Capture One. So I agree, but only would really make permanent about 15% of my photo files, Mike says. And also, my point is, what you think you need to preserve changes over time. Yeah, this is very true. This is a very, very true thing. All right, so it's a little after 7 o'clock. Do you guys have any questions about the new or the old versions of Lightroom? I mean, we can, you know, I've used Capture One. It's very limiting, Mike says. Otherwise, I was thinking I'd maybe just take an image or two and kind of go through what I usually consider my normal workflow to see how this works for the very basic stuff as compared to, my older version of Lightroom, and you guys could just kind of follow along with it. What do you think? Mark, did you have any? Okay. Got to sign out, Mike says. He's got to go. Okay, that's cool. All right, so I'm just going to start with a very quick culling process, and I'm just going to call a section of images. I'm not going to call a full set. So let's see here. E still works, taking you into, they call it the detail view now. Oh, that's interesting. E takes you into edit, the develop module. So it's not D anymore, it's E. So if I go to grid mode, D.
Yeah, that's one thing I read, is that a lot of the shortcuts change.
Yeah, they're changing shortcuts. So now D is the loop view, as it was called, which just shows you the image. Let's see. Steve says, I restarted my computer and Lightroom got better, but after about 2 photos, it is snail slow again. This might run slow, but also consider the fact that I've got a streaming software running in the background, which is churning up a lot of PC processes. So I don't expect this to be super fast. But one of the other things I noticed that's gone in this version of Lightroom are the color labels. And I kind of don't like that, because if we go back here again, I'll show you guys, you can see that
yeah, you like using those color labels, didn't you?
Yes, I like these color labels because I have my images, and I'm just gonna I'm trying to find a folder that has a combination. I have my images, and when I go through, I flag my keepers, or the ones I want to evaluate, not flag, but I label them with red, and then I narrow down from there, and then my final edits are yellow, like you see here. And I like that because they stand out visually, and it's very quick and easy for me to find them. And it's also easy for me to filter down to them by just filtering out by yellow, and now I can see just my final edits here. So I love the color labels, even though it's a non-standard metadata item. They are not available at all in this new version of Lightroom. You can only flag an image and assign a star rating. And I just need to ask for a second, Mark, and I definitely want to hear if you use this either. Does anybody use star ratings? Because I got to tell you, to me, star ratings are stupid. Because like 1 through 5, there's no 3-star image for me. It's either 5-star, which is an image that I love and I'm going to edit, or it's 0 stars and I'm not going to edit it. So like I don't use stars because I find like they don't work for my brain.
I do use the stars.
Okay.
Typically, what I do is when I go through my first call, I'll mark things that I want to edit as 3 stars. And then once I actually edit them, then I'll change it to a 4-star, or if it's one that I really, really like, a 5-star. And if I've made a copy because I've edited, done some work in Photoshop, then the original one, I'll turn the stars off and then make the new one either a 4 or a 5.
Okay.
And then that way I know if it's higher than, if it's 4 or higher, then it's edited. If it's 3 or lower, and also if I have, like for example, the shoot I just did on the weekend, which was a corporate job, there were different sections to it. So then I used 2 stars for one particular section. And when I edit them, then once the numbers change, I know it's been edited. And then for another section, I used a different star rating, and so I do kind of use it
okay.
a fair bit. But I've never used the colors myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't mean to imply, by the way, that if you use stars that you are stupid, because that is absolutely not the case. I just mean for me in my brain, stars don't work, and I find them to be a stupid way to try to flag, label, and organize my photos. For me only. I don't want to imply at all that anybody else is stupid for using them, because whatever way works for you is the way you should do it. So I just want to clarify that. But just hearing what you're saying and what some of the other folks are saying, I can see how that could work. I still don't think I would use them, but I understand that kind of a workflow, and I see how that would make sense. In a way, it's not all that different from the color labels, because I have different color labels for different things. I have red for the ones that I'm going to evaluate. I have yellow for the ones that are done. and I have green for what I call rainy day edits, which are images that are very similar to the one that I picked to edit, but different enough that I think I might go back and edit them again someday, just because, you know, I like the image, even though it's quite similar to the other one. So
Yeah.
I could see how...
I used to do it that I'd always do. If it was a favorite image, I'd just mark it as a 4 or a 5,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd go and edit. But then I had a harder time without really looking as to whether or not I had edited it already or not. So that's why I changed so that 3 were ones I was going to edit, and then once I edit them, then I bumped them up to where I wanted them to be.
Okay. What I don't like is here you don't have the option to... You can't see any of that information on the cell or the thumbnail of the image. And that's something that I definitely miss in this version of Lightroom, because I just labeled this one 3 stars or 5 stars. You can see the label down at the bottom, but not on the image itself, which doesn't allow it to stand out visually and quickly for me to be able to say that's the image. So I kind of I don't like that they've taken away the cell idea, where you could see additional information around the image. Fizzy is laying right in front of my monitor, so I can't see the comments. I'm gonna have to grab them over here. So I just want to see how everybody else uses stars. So Jason uses it to help narrow things down. Sandy says no stars. Fulminato says I rarely use stars, only flags or colors. That's how I do it. I use flags and colors, but again, that's just my brain. Jeff uses stars. Steve says I pick ones that look good to edit, then go through those and give a 2 to final, and final edits are a 3. Jason does something similar to Steve. And he says if it's not worth it at all, I just reject and delete it. Or if they blinked, I misfocus, etc., etc. Steve says after 1 star, I survey similar shots and 2 stars for ones to edit. And Jeff says, for me, 3 stars are the ones I finally choose for editing. 4 are working, and 5 are final edits and complete.
Similar to me.
Okay, I see that. I see how that could work.
Yeah, and same thing with the stars. You can filter if you want to see ones that are greater than 3 or only 3s. Like that. Like I said, I'll sometimes when I'm filtering, I'll filter to see only the 3s, so I know these are the only ones that I have to edit. And then as soon as I change it to a 4 or a 5, it disappears off the list because I'm only looking at just the 3s.
Right. Yeah. No, I can see how that makes sense. And I was thinking, because I looked at this and I was like, okay, if I was using this because I don't have colors, how would I try to use stars? Would I use stars or would I just use flags? I would probably just use... Well, no, I wouldn't use flags because you can only pick or reject or have them unflagged. So I'd probably have to use a combination of flags and stars to replicate what I do were I using this.
Right.
Charlie says, I've had Lightroom hard copy for 2 years and have not figured everything I can do with it. Now I have to relearn a new version. Charlie, that's not actually the case. The current version of Lightroom is rebranded Lightroom Classic, like we talked about, and that is going to continue to exist. So you don't, like, this is not replacing that. This is currently running alongside of that. I think eventually, yeah, it's another option. So you don't, and I actually don't recommend that you just stop using the old Lightroom version and move over to this. I think that would be a bad idea. I would recommend, if you are interested, that you try checking this one out because you might like it better. Some people might like this better, but you don't have to.
If you start playing with it now, and as it grows, you'll have a good foundation and know how everything works. And versus if you wait a couple years, then there's going to be stuff you never learn because you never did it. Whereas you kind of start playing with it from the beginning, then you got a little bit of give there because you'll be learning it as you go. Yeah.
Oh, somebody mentioned this earlier, and keywording is available. I just clicked the little keyword option down here in the library module, and it opens up this keyword panel. Again, not nearly as sophisticated a keywording system as in the other version of Lightroom, but they are still available. And as we mentioned earlier, Adobe is building AI into the cloud version of this to try to auto tag images for you to simplify your search and finding your images. Fizzy is trying to eat my fingers now. Charlie says, okay, I can have both versions on the computer at the same time. Yes, you can. You can. I currently have both. This is Lightroom CC, the new version, and this here is Lightroom Classic, the old regular version we're used to. Both are installed side by side. They are completely different and separate programs. So if you want to run and use both and play with them, you can do so. Just be careful you don't take your catalog and somehow merge it across both of these pieces of software and turn it into a giant mess.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Is keep. I would keep the Lightroom Classic as your main editing system, and keep all your raw files, or if you're using RAW or JPEG, keep those in the old Lightroom, and just take a few choice picks and import them into the new version of Lightroom, but still keep them in the old one. That way they're completely separate, but you have some files to play with. Don't take files from one shoot and use it in one catalog, and files from another shoot and use it in the old one. I would not recommend that at this stage of the game. I would basically stick with using the old Lightroom for all your main stuff. Make sure all your files are there, and just occasionally, when time allows, bring some of those files, basically import them again into the new version to play with. I hope that wasn't confusing.
I 100% agree. All of these files that I have in here are from photo shoots that are in my main Lightroom catalog, but I imported these into the new version strictly to play with them. All of my editing, all of my primary editing will take place in Lightroom Classic CC and Photoshop, and the final edits will be in Lightroom Classic CC. I plan to play with this a little bit to see what the limitations are. And honestly, what I plan to do is to see if I could build a workflow with this, even though I don't intend to switch over to it, to see where the limitations are and what I would want Adobe to add to it, and you know, what I would miss and things like that. So that's what I intend to try to do here.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking as well too.
Okay. Jeff says that the AI is already working as well, that there is a video where somebody had a bunch of photos uploaded, and when he did a search on sailboat, it brought up all of his sailboats, and he didn't input any keywords. So
that's cool.
Yeah, let's try it. I mean, my photos are a little bit different, so I'm just going to go to all photos, and I'm going to try something. I'm going to first try clown, because I've got some clown-ish images here. That worked pretty well. These are clown-based. Not all of them, but a few of them. Let's see. Let me try something else here. Let's try...
yeah, Jeff suggested red photo. Try yellow photo. You got a bunch there with a lot of yellow.
Yeah, I was actually going to do a color, so we'll go with yellow. Let's see what yellow does. Okay, yellow completely missed the ones that were right in front of us. So it sort of worked, but let's try red. Red didn't. Oh no, red brought up a lot. Red brought up the ones that have all that yellow in them because of her jacket, but it didn't bring up the yellow, which is the dominant color in the shot. So it's obviously working to some degree. I'm going to try wine, since I have those wine glasses ones. That worked. And I'm also going to try...
Do you have any pictures with doors in it?
Let's find out. Door. Yes, I do. Fizzy is going crazy here. So it's pretty good.
I'm trying gold instead of yellow.
Okay, let's try gold. That didn't work. Okay, this is obnoxious. I keep hitting enter, but it searches automatically. So every time I hit enter, it gives me that boom, which is obnoxious. I'm going to try circus. Okay, now it's not automatically doing it. And it only brought up 2. That boom is... I don't like that sound.
Do you have any animals or anything? Or I guess not yours. They're all people photos.
Yeah, these are all people photos in here. I'm going to try fireplace because I have this image right here of a fireplace. Oh no, a black hole. That didn't work. So it's working, but not obviously perfect, which is fine. It's AI. I didn't expect it to be perfect. I expected it to be a little bit better.
If you weren't sure where all your say that clown shoot was from a few years ago and you weren't sure where it was, if you search clown and you got a couple of them, it would at least point you in the direction where the rest of those files might be.
But let's try that, because one of the things that you can't do is, like, I can't right click on here and say take me to the you know, I can't say take me to the containing album. But here's what we might be able to do. Let's go to clown. Okay, so let me do a search for clown again here. And it brings these up. And now I'm going to hit the information icon down here, which is covered up by our heads. But what does it tell us? It tells us the title, the caption, the copyright, the metadata, the status.
The date?
The date.
You can sort by date, correct?
It gives me basic raw metadata, image metadata, but it doesn't give me full metadata. Oh, it does give me the date. Now, that's assuming that I've got it stored by date. What I could do is...
automatically when you import?
What's that?
Didn't you say it automatically stored it by date when you import?
It automatically stores it by date, but when I imported these, I put them into an album called, you know, like 10 Portraits Circus. Like, that would help me find it, because I do store mine by date, yes.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, depending upon how you organize your photos, you know, that may or may not. I'm going to try searching by date. Dog or boat, as well as metadata like keywords or cameras. We're currently not searching for things like faces. Let me try a different version of the date. Okay, so when you input a date format like this, 10, 15, 17, that brought up everything. And so that would be another way to get at it. So, I mean, you know, that's not bad. That's not bad. And I understand, like, it's totally a work in progress. It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, of course. It's only been out a day.
Yeah, I am honestly, again, surprised that it didn't pull up all of these with yellow, but it didn't even pull all of these up for red that have her with the jacket in there. But it could also still be trying to index and or go through these and do the auto keywording stuff that it's got to do. So
yeah,
we'll give them a break.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and just a reminder, you're on your own next week because I'm down in New York. Okay.
So it'll be just me. So let me know in the chat right now before we go. What do you guys want me to do next week? You want me to do a solo? We could do another editing show where we actually go into editing and I answer your editing questions. We could even do it where like you guys send in images you want me to edit so you can see how I do it and ask questions about it along the way. What do you guys think about doing something like that? Or I could do a solo critique show. Or I could do something else if you guys have suggestions. Drop your suggestions in the chat right now, and I'll pick something based on them. Well, Fizzy sits here and tries to chew on my fingers. I really am attracted by the idea of the cloud synchronization. And in fact, I'm going to go to Lightroom on my phone and see how quick and easy it is for me to access these images. As compared to before. Lightroom, where is it? There it is.
Is it a new version of the mobile app for the new version of Lightroom?
Nope, this is the same version of the app, and it's already showing the images here on my phone. It's got them organized by date. I wonder if I can go... Yep, I can see the collections that I created in this version of Lightroom. Let me switch this view so you guys can see this a little bit better. on my phone since I'm kind of small in the corner here. Let me go over here. Oh, I'm going to lose Mark here. Shoot. All right, well, I'll just hold it up here. So if you can see on the screen, those collections are available already on my phone. If I go into the Angela portraits, you can see the thumbnails. They're indicated as raw files. And I'm just going to touch one. And it shows me, you know, I'm in the editing options and I have the ability to edit using the Lightroom tools on my mobile. So I am going to play with this and see how fast it syncs and what, you know, what it's like to do this and have the edit show up on my computer.
I was just going to say, take one picture, crank the exposure a boatload so you know it's when you did, and see how quickly it changes on the computer.
All right, let's do it right now. I'm going to do that. I'm going to just take this one. I'm going to jam up that exposure way, way up. And that's it. I'm just going to go back. And let's see if I can find the file info on this one. Copy to, remove, show, hide info. This is... let's see, 0037. So I should be able to, I know I'll be able to search and find this by the file name. So let's do that. I'm going to go to Portraits, Angela. It is 0037. It is within this section. Let's just do the search.
Nope, I just changed on the screen.
Look at that. There it is. So that's pretty quick. Which makes sense because it's just sending text information into the catalog file and then it just has to update the preview. Like when we think about this synchronization, it didn't like rewrite the file of the image because it's a raw file. All of these edits are stored inside of the Lightroom catalog as yeah, it's non-destructive. They're text instructions basically.
Like an XMP file, I think is what they call it.
Yes,
well, it might be different with the new version. I'm not sure, but.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. Edit sounds cool. Peter says critique. The edits last time where you showed folks photos with some tweaks. A few critiques with some editing. We've got critique votes. All right, so I'll work around that idea. I'll put some stuff out so you guys can submit photos. Yeah, just transfer the sidecar file. Exactly, Jeff.
Well, you could always do a critique and then also. If there's something that you think would be different, you could edit the file and during the critique.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'll do is I'll make it a combo critique/edit. So you can send me an image. I'll actually ask people to send in the raw files, and then I'll do a critique of the image, and I'll also do an edit based on how I would approach editing it to give people an idea. Okay, so we got a couple minutes left. Fizzy, I need to be able to see the chat, buddy. You little snot. So I was going to say something. What was I going to say? Oh, I totally forgot. Oh, Charlie has a question here. So this is off topic. That's what I wanted to talk about. But he says, can I ask why people use Apple instead of PC? I'm thinking about getting a Mac or something if it is better to work with. I'll let you start, Mark, and share your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm a PC user, so I don't think... I think back in the day, it used to be for photo editing and stuff like that, Mac was the way to go, but PCs have come a long way in the past 5 years or so. So I think either one would probably work well either way. So you probably have more experience, Spyros, because you have a PC and you have a Mac, don't you?
Yes. I prefer Mac principally for the software. Now, I do like the hardware in the sense that it's nice. Like, the iMac is a nice machine. I like Apple makes the best trackpads anybody's ever made. I've never used a Windows laptop or any kind of a Windows computer with a trackpad that wasn't a total piece of garbage. But I prefer Mac principally because of the software, because of Mac OS. And this is personal preference, right? Like Fulminato says, this kind of question can start a war, and he put a winky face because, you know, people get in their camps and they're like, you know, Apple's the best thing in the world and PCs are garbage and ba, and that's total BS, right? Like, I recognize that PCs are good. I have a PC, like Mark says. It is my streaming computer out in the studio, and I actually intend to hook this up for streaming our photo blabs too, because where Apple is frustrating is in the limitations that they place on their hardware. They have good hardware, and it does perform well. But for the kind of performance that, like, I need right now to be able to do the streaming that I want to do without, like, literally for the last 2 hours, my PC, my CPU has been running at, it's currently running at 87, 89%. It runs between 80, you know, 85 and like literally 100% when I'm doing a live stream like this, because unless you are literally willing to spend, you know, $5,000+ on a, you know, the upcoming iMac Pro or the, you know, existing Mac Pro, which is so out of date it's not even funny, and they are supposed to be working on a new actual Mac Pro. Unless you're willing to spend, you know, more than several thousands of dollars in one of those kinds of machines, you just cannot get the kind of power out of a Mac that you can get out of a PC for around $1,000, which is sometimes crazy frustrating. And I don't mind paying a premium for something that mostly just works. And I say mostly because Mac OS and Apple computers are not perfect, and do not get the idea that I'm trying to say that they are. But I prefer the Mac software because it mostly lets me just sit down and work and do the things that I need to do without getting in my way too much. Whereas on Windows, I still struggle with the fact that Windows makes doing some things difficult. And when I say difficult, I don't mean hard. I mean, it adds what I feel are unnecessary steps and extra hoops that I have to jump through to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish. And that's what it boils down to. I like working on a Mac because, for the most part, again, it is not perfect, but for the most part, it allows me to sit down and rather efficiently execute the work that I'm trying to execute.
Yeah, I think it's the same idea between Mac and PC as it is like Canon, Nikon, Pentax, Olympus.
Yeah.
Each have their pluses and each have their minuses.
Yeah, it's
a matter of what's going to work best for you. Like if you're a long time Windows user and you know Windows, you might be completely lost buying a Mac. Like I use Windows, the PC, just because that's what I've always used. I don't even think I've ever touched a Mac, so I wouldn't even know where to start. But
yeah, that's exactly it. And I honestly, like, there's a part of me that has been quietly, when I say quietly, I just mean like kind of mulling this over in the back of my head, thinking like, would I want to actually switch everything over to a PC? I wouldn't right now because I still feel like I couldn't work and execute some of the things as efficiently as I can here. But like, there's a part of me that is definitely thinking about this long term, especially if Apple abandons Final Cut Pro 10. I use that editing software for my videos, and I really like it. And if they abandon that, like they abandon Aperture, I'll have to use Premiere probably. And it's not that I can't use Premiere on a Mac. I can. But it would make it more likely that I would want to have a much more powerful machine for my editing, because one of the great things about Final Cut Pro is that it is super well optimized. Yeah, I know, honey. I'm not switching anywhere right now. My wife just said, for the love of whatever, you are not switching anything over until you make me $1 million. I'm not planning on switching. I'm just saying these are the things that I think about when, you know, I work and when I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing.
Well, he didn't tell you he's selling all his gear and switching to Nikon too?
Ah, right. So, yeah. Anyway, those are my thoughts. It is after 7:30, which means I got to go and pick up my wife.
Yeah.
So thank you, as usual, everybody, for joining us, hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed this and learned some good information about these new versions of Lightroom and the difference between Lightroom CC and Lightroom CC Classic. I would encourage you to take a look at this CC, the new CC, if you have access to it, because like I said before, I believe it is the future of Lightroom, and it would be smart to get a jump on that. So when this is the only option, you are ready for it. But don't abandon the classic version of Lightroom just yet, because this version...
Don't jump full in on this new one.
Yeah, this version is not ready yet. Thank you very much, Mark. Any last words you want to add here?
Nope. Just that we'll see. I'll see everybody in 2 weeks, I guess, and I gotta figure out what the hell's going on with my computer so I can get my Lightroom working again.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Make sure you get out there and take some damn photos. I probably am not going to be live editing on Friday. I have some work I have to do at the new house, but there's a slim chance I might, so keep an eye out for that. Outside of that, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Night, everyone.
I gotta find all the stop buttons now, as usual. Here it is right here. Okay, good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Night.